早，现在是6:38。昨天 Friends 结束了，那么现在要换哪个新的剧呢？
Phase 2 was drones. Repairman.
Bill Gates, what's your favorite animal? Dog. What's your favorite food? Hamburger. What do you eat for breakfast? Nothing. What is your worst fear? I don't want my brain to stop working.
Bill is a multiprocessor. He'll be reading something else, but then processing at the same time. It's chaos. He thrives on complexity. He makes a framework in his mind, and then he starts slotting in the information. If something doesn't like
found for new issues and the most important article ever.
Bill writes code for days without sleep.
Bill reads for code. Bill writes code without sleep for years, for days without sleep. Bill writes code for days without sleep.
But instead of going to bed,
instead of going to bed, he needs to
blow off steam.
He needs to blow off the steam. Hitting the desert roads of Albuquerque at night. Albuquerque at night.
He drives faster and faster.
He drives faster and faster.
Pushing the limits of this car.
Pushing the limits of his car.
Hello, I'm Bill Gates. In this video, you're going to see the future.
In this video, you're going to see the future.
Bill Gates.
Forbes magazine calls Gates America's richest person.
Forbes magazine calls Bill the most. Forbes magazine calls Gates America's richest person.
Calls Gates America's richest person.
$6.3 billion.
$6.3 billion.
$40 billion.
Worth $40 billion.
$100 billion. Bill Gates is one of the most remarkable people
Bill Gates is one of the most remarkable people
I've ever met.
Predatory
Gambles. Bringing every patient up to your brain. Predatory gamble.
Predatory capitalistic Brainiac.
Patient.
So your brain is a CPU.
Yes.
Rise on complex uses source perspective.
We drop out of power. Never understood the first thing about this.
Right?
The guy never understood the first thing on college.
We drop out of power. Never understood
The first thing, you guys never understood the first thing about it.
this.
Greatest American businessman of his generation. He's changing the world with software.
Bill Gates stifling technological innovation. They're supposed to be jealous. They're supposed to be agitated.
They're supposed to be jealous. They're supposed to be
Bill Gates stifling technological innovation. They're supposed to be jealous. They're supposed to be
agitated.
never lost people. I think for these guys, it's really long. I'm done. If you were innocent, you'd be less dangerous.
When Bill Gates stepped down from Microsoft in 2008, it was worth more than $58 billion. Bill Gates stepped down from Microsoft
When Bill Gates stepped down from Microsoft in 2008,
2008. It was worth more than $58 billion.
he was worth more than $58 billion.
He built that fortune thinking about computer software,
He built that fortune thinking about computer software,
operating systems, spreadsheets,
operating systems, spreadsheets,
and the internet.
and the internet.
Operating systems, spreadsheets, and the internet. So in August 2012,
So in August 2012,
what was on his mind?
what was on his mind?
So basically, we loop around this way.
We loop around this way.
Okay, good. A lot of spider webs up here.
There are a lot of spider webs here.
Melinda always has me go first because she doesn't like cobwebs.
Melinda always let me go first because she doesn't like cobwebs.
Webs up here. Melinda always has me.
Melinda always has me go first because she doesn't like cobwebs.
Go first because she doesn't like cobwebs.
Cobwebs.
I don't mind cobwebs.
I don't mind cobwebs.
I first met Bill when I was at a film screening.
I first met Bill when I was doing film screening.
I don't mind cobwebs.
Film.
I first met Bill
when I was at a film screening.
when I was at a film screening. I walked over to introduce myself
I walked over to introduce myself
and noticed he was reading.
and noticed he was reading.
I looked closer and realized it was a Minnesota state budget.
I looked closer and realized it was Minnesota state budget.
That he was coming over line by line.
That he was covering over line by line.
In his tote bag were 37 other budgets.
In his total bag was 37 other budgets.
Immediately I wondered, Who is this guy?
Immediately I wondered, who is this guy?
What's your favorite food?
What's your favorite food?
Hamburger.
Hamburger?
What's your favorite animal?
What's your favorite animal?
Dog.
Dog.
What's your favorite animal that you eat?
What's the favorite animal that you eat?
Cow. What do you eat for breakfast? Nothing.
What do you need for breakfast?
Nothing. Favorite snack?
Favorite snack?
Nuts. Coffee
Nuts.
or tea? Way more coffee.
Way more coffee.
What is your worst fear?
What is your worst fear?
I don't want my brain to stop working.
I don't want my brain to stop working.
Even before he left Microsoft in 2008,
Even before he left Microsoft in 2008,
Bill and his wife and partner Melinda were all
Bill and his partner and wife Melinda
RV Building was now the world's largest foundation.
already built what's world's largest foundation.
Bill and his wife and partner Melinda
Bill and his wife and partner Melinda were already building what's now the world's largest foundation. The world's largest foundation.
was now the world's largest foundation. They spend nearly $5 billion a year.
They spend nearly $5 a year, $5 billion a year.
Work on U.S. public education,
Work on U.S. public education,
women and family planning.
women and family planning.
They get antiviral drugs to HIV patients.
They get antiviral drugs to HIV patients.
Vaccines supports kids.
Vaccines to protect kids.
But what I really want to know,
What I really want to know,
what does Bill actually do?
what does Bill actually do?
8 o'clock, artificial intelligence tech review.
8 o'clock, artificial intelligence tech review.
9 o'clock, TerraPower meeting.
9 o'clock, TerraPower meeting.
10:30, Microsoft Board of Directors.
10 o'clock, Microsoft Board of Directors. Microsoft Board of Directors. Board of Directors.
Half an hour lunch, we'll call with Warren
Half an hour lunch, you'll call with Warren Buffett.
Buffett. 12:30, sanitation meeting,
12:30 sanitation meeting,
education strategy review,
an education strategy
interview
review,
with a journalist. And
interview with the journalist,
then at the end of the day, he'll go over to the ID lab
and at the end of the day, he will go over to one of the ID lab
and spend some time there.
and spend some time there.
Is he on time?
He
Is he on time?
is on time to the minute every single meeting
He is on time to the minute every single meeting
without fail.
without fail.
Time is the one commodity that he can't buy more of.
Time is the one commodity that he can buy more of.
The limited resources.
It's limited resource. It's
Finite, is that
finite.
the same?
It's finite.
Same 24 hours in a day that the rest of us have.
Yeah, it's 24 hours a day that the rest of us have, as the rest of us have.
I watch him sometimes do his best thinking
I watched he sometimes do his best thinking when he was
when he's
walking.
walking.
When he's walking.
In our family space at home, there's a place I will sit down.
In our family space at home, there's a place I will sit
And
down.
if he's working on something,
And if he's working on something,
he will pace back and forth.
he will pace back and forth.
It helps him somehow organize his brain.
It helps him somehow organizes his brain.
You have to pick a pretty finite number of things
You have to pick up a pretty finite number of things
to tell your mind to work on.
to tell your mind to work on.
You have to decide what should you care about.
You have to decide what should you care about.
You know, what you'd really like is for all the children of the world
You know what you really like is for all the children in the world
to be treated equally.
to be created equally.
What strikes me is how optimistic you are.
What strikes me is how optimistic you are. What strikes me is how optimistic you are. Optimistic you are.
Do you think that was just physiological?
Do you think that was just physiological?
Or is that just like your chemistry?
Or is that just like your chemistry?
It must be. When I was very young, they nicknamed me Happy Boy.
It must be. When I was very young, they named me Happy Boy.
I had an older sister who didn't, beat me up or anything.
I had an older sister who didn't, beat me up or anything.
He did smile all the time.
He just smiled all the time.
My first memories of him are he and I would go and spend like a night or the weekend at my grandmother's house. He and I would go and my first memories of him are he and I would go and spend like a night or
he and I will go and spend a night or the
the
weekend
weekend at my grandmother's house,
at my grandmother's house.
and we would play sort of like make believe, like kids would play, and we would play
Sort of like make believe.
sort of like make believe, like kids would play. We'd make houses and
Like kids would make. We make houses.
whatever. My brother would always be the dog.
My brother would always be the dog.
He was sort of a towhead.
He was sort of a towhead.
Smiley little kid.
Smiling little kid.
It was an early morning when Bill and Melinda read a story in the paper.
It was an early morning when Bill and I would change the course.
It was an early morning when Bill and Melinda read a
It was an early morning when Bill and Melinda read a story in the
story in the
paper
paper. It would change the course of the foundation.
that would change the course of the foundation. That would change the course to their foundation.
The point of my article
The point of my article was to remind
but
people
is to remind people that kids around the world are dying
that kids around the world are dying for reasons
that are entirely preventable,
that are entirely preventable,
just because they have been born in Asia or
just because they are born in Asia or
not New York.
be born in Niger, and not New York.
Niger.
Niger.
We saw this article and diarrhea.
Diarrhea.
I remember saying to Bill, this is unbelievable. People are still dying of diarrhea. How
I remember seeing this article and say to Bill, this is unbelievable. People are still dying today because of diarrhea.
could that be?
How could that be?
Because then we had a young daughter,
Because by then we had a young daughter.
and I knew if this child that I'm holding had diarrhea,
And I knew if this child that I'm holding had diarrhea,
I go to the pharmacy, I go to the doctor.
I had to go to the pharmacy, I had to go to the doctor.
If I was a mom in the developing world,
If I was a mom in the developing world,
this child might not make it.
this child may not make it.
And you can feel, I think, as a parent, that capacity of how tragic that would be and how
And I think as a parent, you can feel, and you can feel as a parent,
I think as a parent,
and you can feel, I think, as a parent,
that capacity of how
the capacity of how tragic that would be,
tragic that would be and how needless and senseless.
and how needless and senseless,
Just because the world won't focus on it.
just because the world won't focus on
Are you
it.
kidding me?
Are you kidding me?
We have made the commitment that the vast resources from Microsoft will go back to society.
We have made commitment that
We have made the commitment,
we had made the commitment that the vast resources
the vast resources from Microsoft will go back
from Microsoft would go back to society. From Microsoft would go back to
to
society.
society. But what this article did for us is
But what this article did for us was
really got us thinking about
really got us thinking about
global health and what could you do?
what could you do about global health and what could you do.
They had started philanthropy.
They had started philanthropy.
They were providing computers in Southern Africa.
They were providing computers in South Africa.
And it was kind of frustrating. Didn't really feel like it was very effective. They were searching around for new issues. Feel like it was very effective with computers in Southern Africa. And it was kind of started philanthropy.
It started philanthropy. 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 Philanthropy.
Philanthropy.
Philanthropy.
They were providing computers in Southern Africa.
They were providing computers in South Africa.
And it was kind of frustrating. Didn't really feel like it was very effective.
And it was frustrating kind of feel it was not very efficient,
Rich and Southern Africa, and it was kind of frustrating.
and it was kind of frustrating. Didn't feel really like it was
Didn't
effective.
feel like it was very effective. They were searching around for new issues,
They were searching around for new issues,
and the most important article
and the most important
I've ever
article
written for that reason.
I've ever written for that reason.
Bill went on to read the World Development Report about how many kids. Bill went on to read the World Development
Bill went on to read the World Development Report
about how many kids
about how many kids
are dying of diarrhea.
are dying in diarrhea.
At the time this book comes out,
At the time this book comes out,
12% of all kids die before the age of 5.
12% of all kids die before the age of 5.
3 million times a year,
3 million times a year,
parents are burying children because of diarrhea. In times a year,
3 million times a year,
parents are burying children
parents are burying children
because of diarrhea.
because of diarrhea.
And in the world that I'm spending time in,
And in the world that I'm spending time in,
I've never met a single parent who had to bury a child.
I've never met a single children who have to bury their child because of diarrhea.
Because they died of diarrhea.
Because they died of diarrhea.
So it makes you wonder, hey, is the world applying? So it makes you wonder,
So it makes you wonder,
hey, is the world applying its incredible set of resources?
is the word implying sort of the incredible set of resources?
Is the world
It makes you wonder, is the word applying
its incredible set of
its incredible set of
resources to eliminate these deaths?
to eliminate these deaths?
What I think is a miracle is that
What I think is a miracle is that
1,000 influential people have this book but never read it.
thousands of influential people has this book but never read.
Miracle is that 1,000
1,000 influential people have this book but never read.
influential people have this book but never read it. You happen to be one of the most influential people and you read it.
You happen to be the most influential people and you read it. You happen to be the most influential people and you've read it
Understood it.
and you understood it
You decided, okay, this is the action I want to take.
and decided, okay, this is the action I want to take.
Yeah, this book would sit on a lot of shelves.
Yeah, this book would sit on a lot of shelves.
It's not a page turner.
It's not a page turner.
8 plus 4. 4 plus 9. 3 plus 2. 9 plus 7. 7 plus 5.
Remember the day when you realized that you were smarter than other kids your age?
Remember the day when you realized that you're smaller than other kids your age?
3 plus 6. 10 plus 2. They used to have these records they put on.
I used to have these records they put on,
And voice would say
and the voice would say
13 plus 18.
13 plus 18.
And I'd write the answer down, look at other students. The recording would go fairly quick.
The recording would go fairly quickly.
13 plus 18. 17 plus 9.
17 plus 9.
10 plus 32. And so as I write the answers down, you could see people kind of going, if this is too fast.
And I started to writing my answers down, and you look around people, they will go, this is too fast.
Write the answers down.
So I'd write the answers down, and you could see people kind of
You
going,
could see people kind of going, if this is too fast. So I had a sense that my mind was snappy
so I had a sense that my mind was snappy
on, simple addition type things.
My mind was sappy on simple addition type things.
That my mind was
Snappy.
happy on, simple addition type things. And by 8th grade, you take this math test.
And by 8th grade, you take this math test.
And you do best in the state.
And you do the best in the state.
Yeah. And not just best in the state from 8th graders.
And not just the best in the state for an 8th grade, but
best in the state. Yeah. And not just best in the state.
And not just best in the state from 8th grade.
From 8th graders. You get best
8th graders.
in the state from every 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade. That's pretty mind blowing. 8th, 9th, 10th.
And you gave 8th, 10th, not 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grader.
11th and 12th graders. That's pretty mind blowing.
That's pretty mind blowing.
Which parent pushed you to be the best?
Which parent pushed you to be the best?
My mom. My mom was very engaged
My mom was very engaged
in all of our day-to-day activity.
in our day-to-day activity.
And my dad was amazing as a role model,
And my dad was amazing as a role model.
but the person who tried to get me excited about things.
But the person who tried to get me excited about things,
That was very dominated by my mom.
that was very dominated by my mom.
She was very warm. She had a very good sense of how to make people feel comfortable.
She's very warm. She has a very good sense of of how to make people feel comfortable. He had a very good sense of how to make people feel comfortable.
She's very socially skilled and
She's very socially skilled and
not in a fake way,
not in a fake way, but in
in
a
a very genuine way.
very genuine
She
way.
cared about people and was interested in people.
She cared about people and was interested in people.
This is my mom. This is actually some early medical stuff
This is my mom. This is actually some early medical stuff
being displayed at this university that my mom must have been involved with somehow. Being displayed at this university that
displayed at this university that my mom
my
must
mom
have
must have been involved with
been
somehow.
involved with somehow.
She was very big in the social scene in the Seattle area.
She is very big in the social scene in the Seattle area.
She was on a lot of volunteer boards and did
She was on a lot of volunteer boards and
that kind of thing with United Way.
did that kind of thing with United Way.
And that ability to be a good board member
And that ability to be a good board member
then got her other positions on boards that actually
and got her other positions on board that paid.
paid.
The university, the insurance company,
The university, the insurance
the
company,
phone company.
the phone company.
There's certainly no doubt that my involvement in the community
There's certainly no doubt that my involvement in the community
has had a tremendous impact on
has had a tremendous impact on the business
the
career
business career that I now have as well.
that I now have as well.
And that was my mom. Suit on, put together, briefcase, walking out the door to a meeting. And that was my mom. Suit on, put
Suit on, put together,
together,
briefcase, walking out the door to a meeting.
walking out the door to a meeting. there was a newspaper article and there was this photograph
There was a newspaper article, and there was this photograph
of a boardroom table,
of a boardroom table,
and my mom was the one woman sitting at the table. Boardroom table, and my mom was the one woman sitting at the table.
and my mom was the one woman sitting in the table, sitting by the
My
table,
mom was the one woman
sitting at the table.
I think we always had the impression
I think we always had the impression
that she expected us to succeed,
that she expected us to succeed,
to be successful.
to be successful.
You talk about, oh, those parents must be very proud their kids doing that, or
She's talking about all those kids, all the other kids was succeed of doing that.
you talk about, oh, those parents must be very proud their
Oh, those parents must be very proud of their kids.
kids doing that, or those parents must feel a little bad their kids not doing that.
Those parents must feel a little bad their kids not doing that.
She had a certain sense of value
She had a certain sense of values
that were communicated to us in that kind of indirect way.
that would communicate to us in that kind of indirect way.
Communicated
They communicated to us in that kind of
to us in
indirect
that
way.
kind of indirect way.
She was a force.
She was a force.
She was a force. And she wanted our family to be a force.
And she wanted our family to be a force.
Come on.
I did reporting in both Africa and India, and
I did reporting for both Africa and
I
India.
remember in India at one point,
And I remember in India at one point,
I had to pee, and so I asked the woman I just been interviewing, the family I just spent several hours with, so where can I pee?
and suddenly I want to pee, so I had to pee. So I asked the woman I just been interviewing, the family I just spent several hours with, hours with.
Where can I pee?
So where can I pee?
And she pointed me somewhere, and I realized it was taking the urine in.
And he pointed somewhere, and I realized it was taking
This gutter
urine in this gutter
to where they were collecting their water to drink. Taking the urine in this
urine in this gutter. It was taking the urine in this gutter. Urine.
better to where they were collecting their water
to where they were collecting their water to
to
drink.
drink. People were defecating in the same spot.
People defecating. People were defecating in the same spot. On the same spot.
In many developing countries, people choose to go outside because they can't stand using a pit latrine. A hole in the ground that has a terrible smell and often overflows. For half the world's population, more than 4 billion people,
So half of the
for half the world's population,
for half the world's population,
more than 4 billion people,
more than 4 billion people,
there's no good option.
there is no good option.
There's a whole area of global development called WASH.
There's a whole area of global development called WASH.
So WASH stands for water,
The WASH stands for water,
sanitation, and hygiene.
sanitation, and hygiene.
Most philanthropies that work in that space
Most philanthropies that work in that space of water,
sanitation, and hygiene. You work on water. Like you hear a ton about water.
like you hear a ton about water.
Everybody's into water.
Everyone's into
People
water.
say, oh, we need clean water. Well, yes, the water should be clean.
Well, yes, the water should be clean.
You can give people clean water.
You can give people clean water
In a pond that has human sewage in it.
that has human sewage on it. But if their kids were playing in a mud that has human sewage in there,
And that's where all the diarrheal infection is taking place.
that is where all the diarrhea infection comes from.
Philanthropies work on sanitation. So sanitation,
A lot of philanthropies work on sanitation. Sanitation is two main things.
is two main things: toilets and sewer system.
Toilets and sewer system.
They're both areas where there's been a nearly complete lack of innovation.
There are both areas where there's been a nearly complete lack of innovation.
So Bill went looking for people who could apply a new way of thinking to the problem. So Bill went looking for people
So Bill went looking for people
who could apply a new way of thinking.
who can apply new way of thinking to the problem.
Called mechanical engineer Peter Janicki.
He called Mechanical engineer Peter Janicki.
I have never thought about sanitation.
I have never thought about sanitation.
I thought about a lot of other things.
I thought about a lot of other things.
Visit Peter's Aerospace Company.
If you visit Peter's Aerospace Company, Aerospace Company,
There's a lot of technology in warehouses you're not allowed to see.
there are a lot of technologies in the warehouses you're not allowed to see. Technology in warehouses you are not allowed to see.
Here they build top secret parts for the military.
Here they built top secret parts for the military and more.
And more.
So when Bill first came to me,
So Bill came first to me.
are you interested in working on the sanitation problem?
Are you interested in working on the sanitation problem?
I thought to myself,
I thought to myself,
what sanitation problem?
what's
If
sanitation
there's
problem?
anything that we've solved, in my opinion, it's sanitation.
If there's anything we've solved, in my opinion, it was sanitation.
Most of us don't think about what happens after we fly.
Most people don't figure out what happens after we flush. Don't think about what happens after we flush. Clean water fills the bowl, dirty water goes flush.
Dirty water gets flushed. Flushed water travels through a complex network
Flush water travels through a complex network of pipes
of pipes and arrives at a treatment center.
and arrives at a treatment center.
There, the water goes through things like a grit chamber. There, the water goes
There, the water goes through things that like a grit chamber.
through things like a grit chamber.
Grit chamber.
Gravity belt thickener. That's digester.
Gravity belt thicker and gravity belt thickener, and a sludge digester.
All to produce safe water.
We start looking at the United States and the population.
We started to look at United States and the population.
It's a big country.
It's a big country.
There's actually not that many people live here.
There's actually not that many people live there. And there's actually not that many people live here.
300 million people in America.
300 million people in America. 300 million people in America.
And then you start looking at these other countries.
And then you start looking at these other countries.
They have 10 times the population density
They have 10 times the population density
that we have.
And
everybody wants to do what we're doing.
And everybody wants to do what we are doing.
You built slums without putting the piping in,
If you build slums without putting in the piping in,
going back in, getting the water,
going back in, getting the water,
building the piping, it would be tens of billions for a single city.
building the pipe in, that would be tens of billions in a single city
To go in and build out modern sanitation.
to go in and build up modern sanitation.
It is not a system that will ever scale down from the very poor countries. It is not a system that will ever scale.
That is not a system that will ever scale down to a very poor
Down to very poor countries.
Countries,
Even if they can afford to modernize,
even if they can afford to modernize.
that solution requires way too much energy and water.
That solution requires way too much energy and water.
They can afford to modernize. That solution requires way too much energy and water.
And so we have a pit in the ground.
And so we have a pit in the ground
It smells so bad.
It smells so bad.
Then it makes you want to throw up.
Then make sure you want to throw up.
Or we have a multi-million-dollar wastewater treatment plant.
Oh, we have a multi-million-dollar wastewater treatment plants.
Those are our two solutions. They're like, okay, this is the way it is.
Those are our two solutions. We were like, okay, this is the way that it is.
Get used to it.
Get used to it.
Bill wondered what it would take
Go wonder what we take.
to reimagine both toilets and sewage systems.
What if you could,
To reimagine
To reimagine both toilets and sewage systems.
both toilets and sewage systems.
what if you could find inventors
What if you can use found inventors
that could come up with something that's a tenth the cost?
that could come up with something that's a tenth the cost?
You know, that's pretty magical,
You know, that's pretty magical.
and you end up saving millions of lives.
And you end up saving millions of lives.
When I was 6 years old, I can still remember my dad
I can still remember my dad
telling me about the death of one of my brothers.
telling me about the death of one of my brothers.
And then at 9 years old,
And then at 9 years old,
2 more. And then later, 1 more. I was big enough to understand what it means to lose
I was big enough to understand what it means to lose.
those siblings. And I eventually ended up going to the university.
I end up going to the university.
I eventually ended up going to the university.
I eventually end up going to the university.
Started learning why people die.
I started learning why people die.
That was the time I realized
That was the time I realized
people die because of very preventable diseases.
people die because of very preventable diseases.
It was like a hit.
It was like a shit.
I was lucky. I was still alive.
I was lucky I was still alive.
So, what could I do? July left his village in Cote d'Ivoire.
July left his village in Cote d'Ivoire
They moved to Belgium to study sanitary engineering.
and moved to Belgium to study sanitary engineering.
But at the university, he realized that everyone talked about improvements.
But at the university, he realized that everyone talks about the improvements
that would only work in developed countries.
that would only work in developed countries.
I could never imagine those things working in the places I was coming from.
I could never imagine those things working in the place I was coming from. Those things working in the place I was coming from.
I had started really questioning
I had started really questioning all the professors.
all the professors, asked them, can you create a new solution?
And asked them, can you create a new solution?
For a decade, July couldn't find anyone willing to answer that question.
For decades, still cannot find anyone to answer that question.
And then he got an email
And then he got an email
inviting him to meet Bill at the foundation.
inviting him to meet Bill at the foundation.
The only thing I knew was
The only thing I knew was
he started Microsoft, he was very successful.
he started Microsoft. He was very successful.
Why in the world someone like this want to talk about
Why in the world someone like this want to talk about
fecal sludge, fecal tree in a toilet?
fecal sludgy pit latrine and toilet? Fecal sludge.
want to talk about teacher training, but about teacher training.
It's latrine.
Finally, Dulai found someone in the Western world
Finally, Dulai found someone in the Western world
who understood what he knew
who understood what he
from
knew
experience.
from experience.
It was the first time in my life
It was the first time in my life
that conversation was not about whether it is difficult to solve.
that conversation is not about whether it is difficult to solve.
The conversation was about why it doesn't work. The conversation was
about why it doesn't work.
about why it doesn't work. What have we tried?
What have you tried?
What have we never dared to try?
What have we never dared to try?
Bill and Dulai spent hours
Bill and July spent hours
posing all sorts of questions.
posing all sorts of questions.
Toilet not only collect waste,
Toilet toilets not only collect waste,
but turn it into fuel.
but turn it into fuel.
The burning poop inside the toilet
With burning pooping inside the toilet,
create enough energy for it to run itself.
create enough energy for it to run itself.
Would it be possible for a toilet to work
Would it be possible for a toilet to work
without pipes or even outside water?
without pipes or even outside water?
We came to a conclusion that it would be possible.
Bill knew there was still one big question left to answer.
Bill knew there was still one big question left to answer.
How could he transform her scribbles on a whiteboard?
How could he transform his scribble on a whiteboard? Scribbles.
Is something that actually works.
Is something that actually works.
Measure what matters,
Measure what matters.
vaccine rates,
The vaccine rates.
media prioritizes,
How the prioritizer.
revolutions,
Blockchain revolution, strengthening stillness.
and stillness, inventions that change the world,
Inventions that change the world.
how to make a mind,
How do you make a mind?
fundamentals of deep learning,
Fundamentals of deep learning.
quantum mechanics and algorithm,
Quantum mechanics and algorithms.
book of life,
Book of Life, Bad Blood.
like 3.0, educated, the machine, the perfect weapon, plastic,
And how often do you factor this?
And how often do you
the perfect weapon, plastic.
And how often do you factor this?
how often are you packing
This
this?
gets refreshed on a weekly basis.
This get refreshed on a weekly basis.
It gets packed and cleaned for every trip he does. So
And it gets packed and claimed for every trip he does, certainly.
Because he has more time to read while he's traveling
Because he has more time to read while he's traveling
for his work for the foundation.
for his work for the foundation.
This goes everywhere with
This
So this goes everywhere with him.
goes everywhere with him.
He is joyous about learning things,
He is joyous about learning things
like no one I've ever met in my life.
like no one I've ever met in my life.
He doesn't read one book about something.
He doesn't read one book about something.
He'll read like 5 books about something,
He read like 5 books about something,
most of which are too dense for any mortal to
most of which are too dense for any mortal to read, right? Too dense.
read. And he reads really fast
And he reads really fast and
synthesizes really well.
synthesizes really well. And he reads very fast and synthesizes really well. Synthesize.
Now, the most amazing thing is he almost always knows more.
The most amazing thing is that he almost always knows more
than the other person he's talking to about whatever is unbelievable.
than the other person he's talking to about whatever it is. It's unbelievable.
Or than
the other person he's talking to about whatever it is.
person he's talking to about whatever is unbelievable.
I've been with him on vacation.
When I've been with him on a vacation, he'll read
14 books.
He'll read 14 books.
That's a gift. You know, read 150 pages an hour.
As a gift, read 150 pages an hour.
I'm going to say it's 90% retention.
I'm going to say it's 90% retention.
Kind of extraordinary.
Kind of extraordinary.
One thing about Bill is he is a multi-processor.
One thing about Bill.
Kind of extraordinary.
One thing about Bill is
he is multi-processor.
he is a multi-processor. He'll be reading something else,
but then processing at the same time.
Processing at the same time. And when he's off reading, you think, hey,
and when he's off reading, he said, hey, you could have gone to bed an hour
earlier. That's actually when he's working out some of his emotional life.
That's actually when he's working out some of his emotional life.
What do you remember about him?
What do you remember about him?
I remember thinking he's kind of weird, and his friends are weird.
I remember thinking that he's kind of weird, and his friends are kind of weird.
They're kind of nerdy.
They're kind of nerdy.
Yeah. They think differently than me.
They think differently than me.
My brother was happy to be locked in his room for hours, focusing on one thing or another. My brother was happy to be locked in his room for hours, focusing on one thing or another.
Focus on one thing or another.
You're 10 and you're walking into his room. What do you see?
When you were 10 and you were walking into his room, what do you see?
I see a mess.
I see a mess.
Total mess. Books all over the place.
I see a mess, a total mess, books all over the place.
I think left to his own devices. He might have stayed in his room.
And
read books all day long.
You could
You could just see that he was
different.
You could just see that he was different.
I don't think he perceived himself as being different.
But I don't think he perceived himself as different. Perceived himself as different.
I don't know how much he was in touch with what was
I don't know how much he was in touch with what was
more normal,
more normal.
or just because he was so introverted.
Just because he was so introverted.
He wants to be in the room and do
He wants to be in his room and do what?
Shoot pencils.
True pencils.
He was just thinking, pondering.
Pondering.
My mom had a hard time getting him to do things.
My mom had a hard time getting him to do things.
They had a really rocky relationship.
They had a really rocky relationship.
She couldn't get to him.
My parents' authority seemed arbitrary.
My parents' authority seemed arbitrary.
I really didn't want to follow their rules.
I really didn't want to follow their rules.
I would not speak for days at a time.
I would not speak for days at a time.
I felt like I was in some struggle.
I felt like I was in some struggle.
Frustrated?
Does Bill get frustrated?
Oh, yes. Yeah, he's fierce.
Yeah. Oh yes, he's fierce.
He's fierce. It's scary. I mean, he gets like really frustrated.
He gets like really frustrated.
Bill wrote to the most prestigious universities.
Bill wrote to the most prestigious universities,
asking them to think about fixing the most torn problem. So that together they could begin saving lives.
So that together they could begin saving lives.
Most didn't bother to reply.
Most didn't bother to apply.
When he's frustrated, it's let's go faster.
When he's frustrated, he's let's go faster.
Let's solve the problem.
Let's solve the problem.
And let's figure out what's between us and victory.
Let's figure out what's between us and victory.
When's the longest you played on a single day?
When's the longest when you play on a single day?
Oh, 8 hours.
Or 8 hours.
8 hours? 8 or 9.
Or 8 or 9.
What temperature you played in? 106.
What's the hottest you play? What temperature you play?
Who
106.
first taught you how to play tennis?
Who first taught you how to play tennis?
My parents.
Okay.
In the summers we played. We came up and went to the canal and
We came up and went to Hood Canal, and
they want us to do all the sports.
they wanted us to do all the sports.
So even baseball,
So even baseball.
swimming, football. Favorite memory from Camp Cheerio?
Favorite memory from capture,
You know, having my dad,
having my dad.
who's the mayor. We the singing march.
The singing
Had
march.
a lot of songs, but the theme song was
We had a lot of songs, but the theme song was
from the Bridge Over the River Kwai song.
from the Bridge Over the River Kwai song.
March on the road to Cheerio. Here we go. Back for a real sensation. At the place that we are. No, why do you love that so much?
Why do you love that song so much?
Well, just because I was a kid. Those were good times.
Well, that's just because I was a kid and those were good times.
We go with 9 or 10 different families.
We'd go with 9.
Those were good times.
We go with 9 or 10 different families.
We'd go with 9 or 10 different families.
So we around the whole resort.
We'd went out the whole resort.
This tradition of Cheerio
This tradition of Cheerio
was built around games.
was built around Givington.
This tradition of Cheerio
This tradition of Cheerio
was built around games.
was built around games.
There was a tennis tournament for the adults.
There was a tennis tournament for adults. Tennis tournament for adults.
There were Olympic games for the kids.
There were Olympic games for the kids.
There was a gunny sack race. There was a running race.
There was a dancing sack race. There was a running race.
There was a
Gunny sack race.
race. There was a running race.
There was a running race. There was an obstacle course, carry an egg on a spoon.
Nothing fancy,
Nothing fancy,
but definitely competitive.
but definitely competitive.
Oh, almost.
Bill knew that the best and brightest engineers are too often focused on well-funded projects. Bill knew that the best and brightest engineers are too often focused on well-funded projects.
Are too often focused on well-funded projects.
For business, and the military.
For business and military.
We had to find a way to get them to think about toilets.
So we got to find a way to get them think about toilets.
At Cheerio,
getting your spot on the podium was really important.
Getting your spot on podium was really important.
He wanted to win.
He wanted to win.
My brother happens to be very competitive. My brother happens to be very competitive.
That,
My brother happens to be very competitive.
My brother happens to be very competitive,
I think that competitive
but I think that competitive thing
thing got him going.
got him going.
Bill went back to 8 universities,
Bill went back to 8 universities,
but instead of asking them to present their designs in private,
but instead of asking them to design their designs in private,
he had another idea.
he had another idea.
The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is leading a competition to invent a new toilet. The Bill and Melinda Gates
The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation
is leading a competition to invent a new toilet.
leading a foundation to invent a new toilet.
Technology, your toilets. Bill Gates, and this wasn't the day, your everyday throw.
Microsoft mogul Bill Gates is looking for ways to flush out contaminated drinking water.
To flush out contaminated drinking water around the world.
The Melinda Gates Foundation is offering them nearly $7 million to
Operate without running water, electricity, or a septic system. The foundation expects to prototype.
Prototypes include a toilet that
Prototypes including a toilet
uses microwave energy to turn human waste into electricity.
Some models turn urine into water for flushing, or use insects to eat it. The magnet is not a very choosy thing.
magnet is not a very choosing thing when it comes to what it wants to eat.
Even Bill was amazed by
Even Bill was amazed by just how audacious these ideas are. Audacious.
ideas were. But he also knew it would take years,
But he also knew it'd take years
or even one, to become a reality.
for even one to become reality.
And still, every day, thousands were dying.
And still, every day, thousands were dying.
You have pit latrines in communities,
You have pit latrines in communities,
and eventually they fill up. Now what do you do with this material? In communities, and eventually they fill up.
and eventually they fill up.
Now what do you do with this material?
Now, what do you do with this material?
It's absolutely full of pathogen.
It's absolutely full of pathogens.
And they have no place to put it.
And they have no place to put it.
It's got to go to a sewer treatment plant.
It's going to go to the sewer treatment plant. Sewer treatment plant.
In other parts of the world, modern sewage treatment simply doesn't exist.
In
other parts of the world, modern sewage treatment simply doesn't exist.
Modern sewage treatment simply doesn't exist.
Even in urban areas.
Even in urban areas.
I traveled and I saw a whole bunch of the wastewater treatment plant.
I traveled and I saw a whole bunch of wastewater treatment plants.
None of them were running.
None of them were running.
The sewer was just going around them.
The sewer were just going around them.
They build them, but they can't afford to run them.
They build them, but they cannot afford to.
The sewer was just going around them. They build them, but they can't afford to run them.
But they cannot afford to run them.
In the car, most human waste pours into canals.
In the car, most human waste pour into canals. In the car, most human waste pour into canals
That flow directly into the Han Bay.
that flow directly into Han Bay.
There, infectious diseases spread at alarming rates.
There,
infectious diseases spread at alarming rates.
infectious diseases spread at alarming rates.
Just as Bill asked July to help him reinvent the toilet.
Just as Bill
asked July to help him reinvent the toilet.
asked July to help him reinvent the toilet.
He wondered if Peter could help him invent a new treatment plant.
He wondered if Peter can help invent a new treatment plant,
One that doesn't waste water
one that doesn't waste water
or require a lot of energy.
or require a lot of energy.
I was a little bit discouraged at first
I was a little bit discouraged at first because
I couldn't think of a technical solution.
I couldn't think of a technical solution.
A lot of people were looking at filtration. They were like, I gotta filter this somehow.
A lot of people were looking at filtration. I got to fill this up somehow.
And in my view,
And in my view,
filter something
you can't filter something
that's so radically different
that's so radically different
every time. So this is sewer sludge.
So this is a sewer sludge.
What do you think's growing in there?
What do you think is growing here?
Tomatoes.
Tomatoes.
You know why?
You know why?
Because people eat tomatoes.
Because you eat
The
tomatoes.
seeds go through the person
And the seeds go through the person
and they end up here.
and they end up here.
Looks like it's pretty dry.
Looks like it's pretty dry.
Believe it or not, there's actually a lot of really good stuff in
Believe it or not, there's actually a lot of good stuff in there.
this shit. There's a lot of water.
There's a lot of water.
So I started looking at it and saying,
So I started looking at it and saying,
I can boil it.
I can boil it.
There's a lot of water. And so I started looking at it and saying, I can boil it.
Bill and Peter knew a boiling poop could generate steam.
That steam generates energy.
The steam generates energy.
The energy is necessary to power a sewage system.
The energy is necessary to power sewage system.
But what if the treatment center could use poop to power itself?
But what if the treatment center could use poop to power itself forever?
Forever. And just maybe they asked,
And just maybe they asked,
could that steam produce clean,
could that steam produce clean, drinkable water? Could that steam produce clean, drinkable water?
So by the time you were 12, things got really bad
So by the time you were 12, things got really bad
with your mother, right?
with your mother, right?
Yeah, I definitely gave my mom a hard time
Yeah, I definitely gave my mom a hard time.
not following along with what she wanted,
Not following along what she wanted,
really trying to detach myself.
and really try to detach myself.
So how did you express that frustration? Oh, just
So how did you express that frustration?
disobedience,
Oh, just disobedience, disrespect.
fact. I mean, it's kind of embarrassing to think about it
I mean, it's kind of embarrassing to just think about it
now.
In an argument over dinner,
in an argument of a dinner.
Bill shouted at his mother.
Bill shouted at his mother,
What he describes today as
and what he described today as
totally sarcastic,
totally sarcastic,
smart-ass kid rudeness.
smart ass kid rudeness, totally sarcastic. Totally sarcastic. The sarcastic sister of what's happening. Sarcastic. Other totally sarcastic. Sarcastic, smart as kid rudeness. Other.
In a rare burst of anger, Bill's dad.
In a rare burst of anger, Bill's dad threw a glass of water at Bill's face.
They actually went and got some counseling.
They actually got some counseling.
Anger, Bill's dad threw a glass of water at Bill's face.
They actually went and got.
They actually got some counseling.
Got some counseling. They pretended that it was a whole family
They pretended that it was a whole family problem,
problem, and we all went.
and we all went.
But then it became clear that it was my mother and my brother.
But then it becomes pretty clear that was only my brother and my mother. But then it became clear that it was my mother and my brother.
It became clear that it was my mother and my brother.
I said to him, hey,
I said to him, hey,
I'm at war with my parents.
I'm at war with my parents.
I don't know if you can help me.
I don't know if you can help me on that.
And he said, well, it's not a very fair war.
And he said, well, it's not a very fair war.
You're going to inflict more pain on them.
You're going to inflict more pain on them. Inflict more pain on them.
And then they inflict on you.
And then they inflict on you.
Really on your side.
And they're really on your side.
Basically, I have the wrong
So, basically I had a wrong way looking at things.
way of looking at things. It took about 3 months to convince me that
It took me about 3 months to convince me about that,
it was brilliant.
but it was brilliant.
I think it was sort of, at some point you gotta let your mother have her way.
That it was brilliant.
I think it was,
I think it was sort of, at some point you've got to let your mother have her way.
at some point you gotta let your mother have her way. That's just the way life is. You gotta let your mother have her way.
That's just
Mother have her way. That's just the way life is.
the way life is, and you've got to let your mother have her way,
You gotta let your mother have her way.
and you're gonna let your mother have her way.
The real question was how I would do in the real world.
The real question is how I would do it in the real world,
Pushing up against them, where
pushing up against them where
they really, cared about me. That was
they were really cared about me. That wasn't the real world.
the real world.
She was intentional about creating opportunities for him to
He was intentional about creating opportunities for him to be social.
be social. I mean, for example, when my dad would go to American Bar Association,
For example, when my dad would go to American Bar Association meetings,
they would have him come
they would have him come,
and be a greeter or do something
be a greeter, or do something
that forced that engagement.
that forced that engagement.
Even at Cheerio,
Even at Cheerio,
there were sort of beautifully engineered interactions
there were sort of beautiful engineered interactions
between the children and the parents.
between the children and the parents.
One of the things that the parents organized
One of the things that the parents would organize is drawing to see.
was a drawing
It's a drawing to see
whose house you would go to for dinners.
whose house you would go to for dinner.
So you had there's a drawing to see whose house you would go to for dinner.
Whose house you would go to for dinner.
So you had to learn to follow their rules,
So you have to learn to follow their rules,
eat their food,
eat their food,
and socialize.
and socialize.
So if your parents had left him alone and not forced him to
So if your parents had left him alone and not forced him to
deal
deal
in the real world,
the real world,
do you think he'd be the same guy?
do you think he'd be the same guy?
I don't think so. You don't know, but I don't think so. I think my parents had a lot to do
I think my parents had a lot to do
with how we turned out.
with how he turned out.
So it's viable that they could get it value engineered down.
So it's viable they could get it value engineered down. Viable that they could get the value engineered down. So it's viable. See a fetus like me as not viable.
I mean, it's not out of the realm that they could get into the price point.
I mean, it's out of the realm that they could get to the one price point that we want.
The critical challenge there is
The critical challenge there is
the heat exchanger is the heat recovery.
the heat.
The critical challenge there is with the heat exchanger
With the heat exchanger
is the heat recovery.
is the heat recovery.
So we're really looking at the best
So we are really looking at the best company in the world
in the world who have expertise in that.
who had expertise in that.
Do you see there being just one manufacturer
Do you see there being just one manufacturer
ultimately in China or multiple?
ultimately in China or multiple?
Melinda brings just a great different point of view
Melinda brings just a great different point of view
that makes you more effective.
that makes you more effective.
Yeah, well, she's totally my partner.
Yeah, she's solely my partner.
There's real partners and there's superficial partners.
There are real partners and there are superficial partners.
You chose to make her a real partner.
And you chose to make her a real partner.
No, she's a real partner because she is, totally
Well, she's a real partner because she's solely
equal in how we do these things.
equaling how we do these things.
We weren't quite there yet when he left Microsoft.
We were quite there yet when he left Microsoft, to be frank.
Because he ran the company, right?
Because he ran the company,
And
right?
he's the CEO of the company and the chairman of the board.
He was the CEO of the company and the chairman of the board.
I knew he was for it. We just needed to change a few of our ways of working together. I knew he was for it. We just needed to CEO of the company and the chairman of the board. I knew he was for it.
I knew he was for it.
We just needed to change a few of our ways of working together.
We just need to change a few ways of us working together. We just needed to change a few of our ways of working together.
It doesn't feel like there's any inequality.
It doesn't feel like there's any inequality.
Even though he's the one that started Microsoft and
Even though he's the one that started Microsoft and not her.
not her, but he appreciates everything about her
Like he appreciates everything about her.
as opposed to like complaining about her.
As opposed to like complaining about her or something.
I've never heard him complain about her.
I've never heard him complain about her.
He's the only person I know on this earth who I've never heard complain about his wife.
He's the only person I knew that would never complain about her wife,
Never
his wife.
heard him complain about her.
He's the only person I know who I've never heard complain about his wife.
Person I know on this earth who I've never heard complain about his wife.
I was good at math in high school.
I was good at math in high school.
My high school teacher decided to go to head principal when she.
My high school teacher decided to go to the head principal when she saw the Apple computers at the conference.
My high school teacher decided to go to head principal.
Go to the head principal. My high school teacher decided to go to the head principal.
Go into a fire, we burning the
Stall with me, it just.
I'd gone to Duke and gotten a degree in computer science and an MBA in 5.
Few of our ways of working together.
It doesn't feel like there's any inequality. Even though he's the one that started Microsoft and not her, but he appreciates everything about her as opposed to like complaining about her.
As opposed to.
I've never heard him complain about her. He's the only
I've never heard him complaining about her.
person I know on this earth who I've never heard complain about his wife.
Is the only person I know on this earth who would never complain about his wife.
I was good at math in high school.
I was good at math in high school.
My high school teacher decided to go to head principal.
My high school teacher decided to go to the head principal
when she saw these Apple computers.
When he saw this Apple computers
Conference. So
at a conference.
Started programming in high school.
So we started programming in high school.
Between math and puzzle, which I love both. It was like this.
Between math and puzzle, which I like both.
Puzzle, and which
I like this whole puzzle, and I just loved it.
I started working at Microsoft in 1983,
I started working at Microsoft in 1983.
and in '87 we hired 7 MBAs,
And in 87, we hired 7 MBAs,
6 guys and her.
6 guys and her.
And she had gone to Duke and gotten a degree in
She had gone to Duke, had gotten a degree in computer science
computer science and an MBA
and an MBA in 5 years.
5 years. So the other people in this pledge class, I mean,
So the other people in this pledge class of MBAs were all like 27 years old, 26 years old.
MBAs were all like 20.
Pledge class. Pledge class.
Years old. She was maybe 22 and a half,
She was maybe 22 and a half,
right? And she was the only one.
and she was the only woman.
Within a very short time, Melinda was running her own division.
Within a very short time, Melinda was running her own division,
Overseeing hundreds of people.
overseeing hundreds of people.
In the consumer division, we were trying to think of the human experience, the user experience. The division, we were trying
Her own division. Overseeing hundreds of people.
in the consumer division,
In the consumer division,
we were trying to think of the human experience,
we were trying to think of the human experience,
the user experience.
the user experience. Bill has amazing scientists and innovative ideas for getting new toilet technology.
Yes, for getting new toilet technology.
For getting new toilet technology.
Which will absolutely change the developing world.
It will absolutely change the developing world. It will absolutely changing the developing world.
But if they can't think about
But if they can't think about
the experience of a mom who takes her child,
the experience of a mom is the one who takes her child to the toilet. A mom is the one who takes her child to the
the
toilet.
moms tell me in the villages
The moms tell me the villages,
the experience of a mom who takes her child to the toilet. The moms tell me
the moms tell me in the
in the
villages,
villages, if men can see over the wall,
if men can see over the
I'm
wall,
not going in there.
I'm not going in there.
It's not safe and it's not private.
It's not safe and it's not private.
If I can't take my child into the little stall with me, it doesn't
If I can't take my child into the little stall with me,
work. I can't leave the child out.
it doesn't work. I can't leave the child outside.
That's where I learned to be a little bit of Chris Whitfield. I'll poke.
That's where I'm willing to be a little bit of grist with Bill. I poked him a bit.
Okay, work. I can't leave the child out. If I can't take my over the wall, mom's the one who takes her child. They can't think of toilet technologies will absolutely change the developing world. Some innovative ideas for getting new toilet technologies will absolutely change the developing world. But if they can't think about the experience of a mom is the one who takes her child to the toilet.
A mom takes their child to a
The
toilet.
moms tell me in the villages,
The moms tell me in the villages that
men can see over the wall.
men can see over the
I'm
wall.
not going in there.
I'm not going in there.
It's not safe and it's not private.
It's not safe and it's not private.
If I can't take my child into the little stall with me, it doesn't
If I can't take my child into the little stall with me,
work. I can't leave the child outside.
it doesn't work. I can't leave the child outside.
That's where I learned to be a little bit of Chris Whitfield.
That's where I am willing to be a little grist with Bill.
Well, I'll poke him a little bit, right? Like, well, how are you thinking about this piece?
Like, how are you thinking about this piece?
How are you thinking about that?
And how are you thinking about that?
We listen and respect each other,
We listen and respect each other,
and then we come to a common viewpoint,
and we come to a common viewpoint.
and that's what we take forward.
and that's where we take forward.
And what are you hoping to get out of the toilet fare this time that you take forward? And what are you hoping to get out of the toilet
And what are you hoping to get out of the toilet fare? And what are you thinking to get out of the toilet fare?
fare this time that's gonna happen in China?
This time that's going to happen in China.
And the last one, there was really a bit of a, we're still in science a little bit.
We've got this last one that's a little bit, or we are still on science mode.
Could this work?
Could this work?
Our hope is to show that momentum.
Our hope is to show enough momentum that that's no longer the question. Momentum. Show enough momentum that that's no longer the question.
That's no longer the question.
When you arrive, you will be straight on this.
When you arrive, you will be straight at the stage. You will be straight on the stage
To deliver your keynote.
to deliver a keynote.
This is going to be a very big historic moment.
This is going to be a very big historic moment.
Top of page 3,
At the top of page 3,
underneath the lectern.
underneath the lectern.
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 There is a shelf with the
There is a shelf with the
poop prop. So you
proof pump.
take a shelf with the poop prop.
Poop pump.
So you'll be standing there and
So you'll be standing there and
it's just right under there.
it's just right under there.
Okay.
Can you say a few words for him, please?
Find this strange microphone.
I'm trying this strange microphone. Thumbs up, thank you. There's 2 bottles of water in the podium that have already been cracked.
They look different on the PC.
Do they look different than the fences? They're on the bottom shelf. Do I set them in there? Because nobody wants them. So they're on the bottom shelf.
And we've been working all these years to fund the early stage
And we've been working all these years to fund the Early stage research.
Research. Now's the time to take it and drive it to maturity.
Now's the time to take it and bring them to maturity.
Research. Now's the time to take it and drive it to
Take it and drive it to maturity.
6 years after the first toilet fair,
6 years after the first toilet fair,
engineers have refined their early
the engineers have refined their early prototypes.
prototypes. What began as a brainstorm at whiteboard
What began as a brainstorm on whiteboard
has finally come to life.
has finally come to life.
This toilet utilizes a screw to
This toilet utilizes a screw to separate urine from feces.
separate urine
From feces. This toilet utilizes a screw to separate urine from feces.
Burning the waste generates energy to power the screw.
Burning the waste generates energy to power the screw. Burning the waste generates energy to power the screw.
All that's left, a small pile of ash.
All it's left, a small pile of ash.
All that's left,
A
small pile of ash.
a small pile of ash.
This squat toilet
This squat toilet
dries then burns waste,
waste,
create heat that disinfects the urine.
and create heats that disinfect the urine.
And this one is powered by disinfects the urine. Dries then burns waste to create heat that disinfects the urine. And this one is powered by solar panels
And this one is powered by solar panels
and uses an oxygen composting process.
and use the oxygen composting process. And use an oxygen composting process. Oxygen composting process. The byproducts, fertilizer, and water for flushing.
We really do see ourselves on top of a sanitation revolution.
We really see ourselves in a constant sanitation revolution.
Many of these toilets require no outside electricity.
Many of these products require no extra electricity. Many of these toilets require no outside electricity for pumping. Plumbing.
And they were ready to replace the pillory.
And they were ready to replace the pillory, the train forever.
But the capital cost?
For the capital cost?
For the time being, about
$50,000 US dollars.
US dollars.
The cost of this now is around
The cost of this now is around 50,000. 50,000
For all the progress,
for all the progress.
no believe a $50,000 toilet was way out of reach.
Bill knew that a 50,000 toilet was way out of reach.
This thing's gonna have to cost less than $500.
This thing is gonna have to cost less than $500.
And right now, we're more than 10 times greater than that.
And right now we are more than 10 times greater than that.
The solution? Find a partner in this room,
The solution, find a partner in this room
manufacture it, and bring the cost down.
to manufacture it and bring the cost down.
I brought a little exhibit here.
I brought a little exhibit here.
This is a container of human feces.
This is a container of human feces.
Inside there could be over 200 million rotavirus.
Inside there could be 200,000 rotavirus particles.
Feces. Inside there could be over 200 million.
Inside there could be over 200 million
Rotavirus.
rotavirus.
Particles, 20 billion Shigella
20 billion Shigella bacteria.
and 100,000 parasitic worm eggs.
And 100,000 parasitic worm eggs. Parasitic.
And that's what kids, when they're out playing,
And that's what kids, when they're
being
playing,
exposed to all the
they're
time.
being exposed to them all the time.
If you fail, it'll be 7 years of work
If it fails, there will be 7 years of work
and $200 million wasted.
and $200 million wasted.
As a businessman, what are your blind sides? What
As a businessman, what are your
As a businessman, what are your blind sides?
what are your blind sides?
What are the moments that you feel like, oh, this is
What are your moments that feels like, oh, this is what I'm not good at.
not so good at?
I'm not so good at.
Well, innovation-based businesses are the only
Well, innovation-based businesses are the only ones that bring anything.
ones that I bring anything
Innovation-based business are the only one that I bring anything
to at all.
to it all. To it all.
So they're the only ones that I bring anything to at all. I like to push the level of risk
I like to push the level of risk of doing things
of doing things that wouldn't happen
that wouldn't happen
without leadership and vision.
without leadership and vision.
You know, that wouldn't happen. I like to push the level of risk of
I like to push the level of risk of doing
doing
things
things that wouldn't happen without leadership and vision.
that wouldn't happen without leadership and vision.
In only 18 months,
In only 18 months,
Peter and his team were able to build a working prototype
Peter and his team were able to build a working prototype
of a standalone treatment plant.
of a standalone treatment plant.
They called it the Omni Processor.
They called it the Omni
And
processor,
the machine worked exactly the way they imagined it would.
and the machine worked exactly the way they imagined it would. It would.
So this is the solution when you empty pit latrine.
So this is the solution when you empty pit latrines,
And instead of dumping all this stuff in the river, you
and instead of dumping all the stuff in the river,
bring it to a centralized omni processor.
you bring it to a centralized omni processor.
It evaporates the water.
It evaporates the water.
Solids go into a fire.
Solids go into a fire.
We burn them.
We burn them.
We boil more steam
We boil more steam
and drive a steam engine to make electricity to drive the whole process.
and drive a steam.
More steam
We boil more steam
and drive a steam engine
and drive a steam engine to make electricity, and drive a steam engine to make electricity drive more whole
to
process,
make electricity to drive the whole process.
to drive the whole process.
It requires no external power
It requires no external power
and no outside water.
and no outside water.
In the end, the only byproducts are electricity, ash,
And in the end, the only byproducts are electricity, ash,
and clean drinkable water.
and clean drinkable water.
We're looking at all these water samples.
We're, looking at all these water samples.
And clean drinkable water.
We're
Looking at all these water samples
looking at all these water samples that's coming out of the omni process.
coming out of the omni processor.
You know where it came from. You can see the
You know where it came from. You can see the pile of shit
pile of shit that it came from 5 minutes ago.
that came from 5 minutes ago. That came in from 5 minutes ago.
Just grabs a glass and he takes a look at it and boom.
Just take a glass and it tastes like water, and boom, it just tastes like water.
It just tastes like water.
But building a prototype in just
The built-in prototype in just 18 months wasn't enough.
18 months wasn't enough. Bill pushed Peter to get the press machine up and running.
Bill pushed Peter to get the machine
But 18 months wasn't enough.
built, but building a prototype in just 18 months wasn't enough.
Bill pushed Peter to get this machine up and running
Bill pushed Peter to get this machine up and running
where people needed it.
where people needed it.
I have access to hundreds of mechanics,
I have access to hundreds of mechanics
engineers, and electricians.
and engineers and electricians,
And getting it to run every day
and get it to run every day.
is a piece of cake.
It's a piece of cake.
But sending it to the car
But sending it to the car
and getting it up and running,
and getting it up and running,
to actually do that is kind of a big deal.
but to actually do that is a kind of big deal. It's kind of a big deal.
Early on at Microsoft,
Early on at Microsoft,
my mom became sort of his right hand.
my mom became sort of this right-hand person.
Person. When we bought a house, making sure
When we buy a house, making sure he actually had a house
we
cleaner,
actually had a house cleaner, helping him have a wardrobe
helping him a wardrobe
when he was getting a photograph taken for some magazine.
when he was taking a photograph taken by some magazine.
I think he was very happy with that
I think he was very happy with that
as a 25, 26-year-old guy.
because as a 25, 26-year-old guy,
That's great. I don't have to worry about all the
that was great. I don't have to worry about this stuff.
She made him be really thoughtful early in his life at Microsoft.
She made him a really thoughtful early in his life at Microsoft
About what it meant to be a community contributor.
what it meant to be a community contributor.
that. She
And feels like
introduced him back into the community.
she introduced him back to the community.
She, got him involved in the United Way.
She got him involved in the United Way.
The community.
She introduced,
Got him involved
got him involved in a United
in the
Way.
United Way.
Got him involved in the United Way.
She was his guidepost.
She was his guidepost.